And let me share this screen. Okay, hi everybody, welcome both in the room and on Zoom to our Internship Jumpstart event. We're going to be going over how to apply for internships, more specifically a type of internship or research experience called REUs, which are research experiences for undergraduates. My name is Sophia Kim, I'm the director of the Science Learning Institute. So we're going to do a little bit of a weird back and forth of guest speakers because some of our guest speakers today have to leave. And so I'm going to do a couple slides. We're going to hear from our guest speakers, and then I'm going to do some more slides, and then we'll hear from a couple more. So I'm just going to jump in if my slides will work. So overview of REUs. REUs is an acronym for Research Experiences for Undergraduates. And this is a whole set, hi, can you sign in real quick? A whole set of opportunities for undergraduate students, not only in STEM, I think they're kind of, well, maybe they're focused on STEM, but we'll answer that question. So an REU is a summer research experience at a university lab or a research center under the guidance of a scientist, and it's about 9 to 10 weeks full-time anywhere in the country. It's pretty amazing experience, and we're going to hear from a couple people who've had an REU experience before. So you get into this program, there are usually several other students who are also in that program, so you kind of develop a learning community with them. It's all paid. So you get paid for your summer research, you get paid for the travel expenses to get to that location if you're not local, and your lodging is included, and we'll hear more about that. It's a great professional development opportunity. Oh, hey Drew, come on in. And it's a great networking opportunity too. So they often start in June, and when we get to hearing from our former students who've had these, we'll talk a little bit more about how you kind of navigate that, especially since we're in the quarter system and we don't end till the end of June. The biggest funder of REUs is the National Science Foundation, and if you've been following the news in the last 8 months, you know that NSF actually experienced a huge funding cut along with NIH. And yet the REUs are still going. So don't think that because these two institutions have gotten a big cut that they're not happening at all. They just might be reduced. And Jeff, I don't know if you have more insight when we get to you about that. But there are also funders, but the biggest funder is the National Science Foundation. So I thought we could just jump in because two of our guests have to leave early. And I wanted to introduce Jeff Matthews first. He's an astronomy instructor here at Foothill. And he's actually the person that gave me the idea to do this workshop last year. And we had a great audience from students, and he really wanted to make sure Foothill students knew about these opportunities. So that's thanks to him. And then we'll hear a little bit from Reese next about her experience. So Jeff, you want to start off and kind of share a little bit about why you think REUs are important for our undergrads? And then also, I know a lot of the times a recommendation letter is something required for this process. So from a faculty standpoint, if you have any tips for students when they're trying to get a rec letter. So those two things would be great if you could share about.
Great, fine. Yeah, happy to share. And thanks for bringing me in on this, Sophia, and just hosting this in general. So kind of taking those questions in order real quick. The importance of REUs. Research. I mean, this is this one word that we're using to try to encapsulate a process that I tried writing it out once, actually, like what are all the things, what are all the different aspects of going into research? And I kind of gave up after like 20 pages. And I don't remember exactly how much it was, but eventually I was just like, I could just keep going for days. There's your core skills within your science domain, right? There's your core concept knowledge and your core math skills and your core like statistics and programming skills that you need to be doing research. But then there's like 1,000 little things. And the best way that humans have figured out to teach the whole of that is by saying, here's the deep end of the pool, kid, shove. Right? There's so many little things to learn that it's best learned by doing. And so, your classes in college are providing sort of this core, this core set of concepts, this core set of skills, but then learning how to use them. It's like learning how to use a wrench. That's what you're doing in your classes, but then actually being put under the hood of a car, right? And having to try to diagnose what's gone wrong, how do I fix it? That's the doing the research process. And so the best we've figured out for how to accomplish that, how to get people doing that, is by having them do it with a mentor who can provide feedback. And so the earlier you start doing that, the better. And also, both just in terms of building up those skills, but also identifying like, what are the things I really need to be learning? What do I need to be getting out of my classes? So that's my attempt at a nutshell description of why REUs are important. And then you had also asked, oh, I forgot, what was the second question?
Like rec letter tips.
Oh, yes. And then rec letter tips. So for letters of recommendation, earlier is better, right? That's always true. But also be sure that you've done something for your professor to write about. We have lots of great students, right? We have many students who come into our classes and do great work. But not all of those students, just doing great work in the science content, that's not enough to be to really to go on and be successful as a scientist, right? You need to be able to play well with others. And so demonstrate that, right? Show in your classes how you've been working with other people, helping other people when they need help, receiving help from other people as you need that help. Being an active participant in the process. I've I've known some people who went into science who just really tried to go it on their own, and it didn't work. Because everything that we try to do, right, we're pushing back the boundaries of human knowledge and human understanding, and that is hard, and it's too hard for anybody to do on their own. And so in your classes, your professors to write a stronger letter of rec, especially for then sending you into a research environment, we need to have seen that, yeah, you can work with other people effectively, and or at least have the beginnings of that skill set. um and the ability to ask for help, but after having tried, like figuring out that line, like how much do I try to figure it out on my own before then going and getting help? Oh, that's so hard to figure out. And I don't know of a good rule of thumb for it, but having demonstrated that you're at least recognizing that this is a thing. And it's possible to go too far in the I'm going to try it on my own direction and just kind of getting lost, or too far in the other direction of, oh, I've hit one stumbling block and I'm going to immediately pull the ripcord. So those are some things to be demonstrating, and that makes it possible for your professors to write those stronger letter of recs. Those are just a few thoughts off the top of my head there.
Maybe just as a final piece, and then I'm gonna hand it off to Reese, like a little pep talk, because I know,
Oh,
having
yeah.
done before, like the rec letters process can be so hard. You're like, I'm one of 50 students, they're not gonna know who I am, I think they're gonna say no, they're already super busy, they're always seem stressed, like, but how to encourage, like, if you can give them the pep talk from a faculty side of, you all expect to get rec letter asks, right? I mean, not that you want to get 50, but that's part of your job in some way.
Well, yeah, so that is part of our job, and it's one of my it's one of my favorite parts of the job, right? When somebody has been coming into my class and they've been demonstrating those traits already, or at least the beginnings of those traits, right? That's fun. To be like, oh, yay, I'm getting to help usher this person, into a wider world. And so in terms of, I think if you're doing those things that are helping you stand out, then then it also don't view it as daunting to then make the request for the letter. And sometimes we are busy. There are definitely times where I'm just like, I'm gonna have can it be 3 months from now? Right. There are definitely those times where just there's too much going on and I don't have the time to write a good letter. And faculty will tell you so. Will tell you right now is really not a good time. 3 weeks from now, I'll have time. Um, but and so that's another part of this asking well in advance, because then they can sit back and they can think, okay, yeah, I can actually fit in the time that this task deserves. And if they don't think that they're going to be able to give it the time that it deserves, then they're doing you a favor by saying, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have the time. Because it is hard to write these letters and to write them well. And it does take time on our part. And so setting things up to for success on your letter writer's part as well is important. So
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate your time. I know you have class, but thanks so much for joining us.
yeah, sorry to have to just run so quickly, but
No, all good, all good. Thank you. And now I'll turn it over to Reese if you can share for a little bit. And I think what you had said, you talk about basically, yeah, like, well, how did you find the one that you wanted to? So Reese is a student, graduated last year, now at UCSD, and she found an REU. So if you could talk a little bit about your search process and the application process, that'd be great.
I'm actually at UCI right now.
Oh, UCI. I keep thinking UCSD. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
So what I did was I knew we were on the quarter
maybe
system.
share a little bit about your background, like what's your major and all that.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Reese. I'm an aerospace engineer. I wanted to focus in material science, the material science portion of aerospace engineering. So I primarily look for REUs that are, well, like material science, aerospace. And so because Foothill is on the quarter system, I knew that some schools wouldn't have the date of the start date of the REU be aligned with like finals. My REU actually started literally finals week of spring, which was not the best. However, I was just able to coordinate with like everyone to like allow me to go to that REU. The way I found it was I just searched for like quarter system schools, and UCI was one of the quarter system schools. Pretty much all the UCs are quarter system, so I primarily searched UC REUs, and UCI was one that popped up. I think there was also UC Santa Cruz and UC Santa Barbara, and so I just found it on a Google search, and from there I looked at the requirements and I saw like, oh, I need letters of rec, as it was mentioned prior. Oh, I need statement of purpose. So those are the two things that I mainly focus on, because those are the two things they heavily asked upon. When I got to my RE over the summer, I actually was able to speak with the guy who admitted me into the program, because I saw that like our cohort was much smaller than the one before, and I was like, why me? Like why pick me? You know? And essentially it all boiled down to my letter of rec and my statement of purpose. Jeff went over letters of rec earlier. Just like find professors who like I guess like know you, and like ask them for strong letters of rec. The people I asked at Foothill was Zach, the dean of STEM, because I was an officer for like several of the clubs there back when I attended, and then I also asked Jeff Anderson, because I had already taken like 3 classes with him, so I knew he would know me. So I asked them about like a month and a half in advance, and I was able to get those letters of rec like in time for my application. But Jeff already spoke about letters of rec, really got strong recommendations. I think, however, what he didn't go over was your statement of purpose. For me, my statement of purpose was that I am an aerospace engineer and I really wanted to work with materials. So I really focused upon that in my statement of purpose, because I was applying to material science like REUs and like aerospace REUs. And so because I was very clear in my statement of purpose, that was actually what helped me get in. So my statement of purpose was very clear. I had a goal. I wasn't, it wasn't like really like foggy in what I wanted to do. My statement of purpose was my purpose. The one thing I do recommend doing before you write that, however, is to look at the professors within the department and see exactly what type of research they do. because I somewhat tailored my statement of purpose for the PI that I wanted to join, or the PI's lab that I wanted to join, the professor who like runs the labs here. And he essentially was an aerospace engineer in the material science department. And so I looked at like some of the titles of the research that he did, and then I was like, oh, I want to do this, which is like very similar to the research that he was doing. And I did get into that lab, so that was really nice. So yeah, so I guess to summarize my advice, get letters of rec, and then like about like a month in advance at least, as Jeff was saying, and then your statement of purpose, make it clear, and make sure you in that statement of purpose include some things that the labs at the university you're looking at are doing. And yeah, that's essentially what got me into the REU. And I think it was a, if you do end up at an REU, it's a really great experience. So yeah.
And Reese, you ended up, like, UCI is where you transferred to too, right?
Yes.
So was that a coincidence that you ended up at an REU at your transfer institution? Because I know all of
that
that
was a
is like,
complete coincidence. I actually got the REU acceptance letter before my college acceptance letter. So it was like, to me, it was almost like a no-brainer to go to UCI because I would have at least a connection to the campus. And the other REUs were like Santa Cruz and Santa Barbara, and those two schools didn't have an aerospace engineering program. Fun fact. So UCI was the only one with an aerospace program, really good material science program, and like I would already be in a lab here. The REU actually allowed me to join another lab. I actually found that the lab I joined over the summer was not like the best lab there is here for me. So I was able to use that REU to get into a different lab here because of the connections I made over the summer.
that's very cool. So it doesn't always happen that way, right? Like your transfer institution and your REU aren't always the same. And sometimes it's okay to go totally different place, check it out, and then, do your transfer process. So, Reese, any other final tip, or I guess maybe just generally, what was your experience like in the REU? Because you kind of got a preview to where you were going, and what was that kind of experience like?
Yeah, so I had a complete it every single REU experience within my cohort was actually different because I was in the theoretical side. Some of people in my cohort were in the experimental side. So the people who were experimentalists, they essentially got to like shadow like grad students with the equipment. They if anyone wants to know, it's like TEM, SEM, X-ray, spectroscopy or whatever. They got to work with like really cool, what's it called, machines and all that, and then work alongside their grad students like projects. Meanwhile, people on the theoretical side, they essentially just sat in cubicles. I primarily sat in like a cubicle like most of the time, and then like shadowed whenever I could with other labs, just to see the machines and all. But I just kind of sat down doing code and like reading a lot of papers. I think the only thing that was very every single person within my cohort did was read and like learn as much as they can from scientific papers, because when you're walking into these REUs, it's a lot of like higher level stuff than what you're used to in classes. So I guess the one thing I would also say when you're going into an REU is be expected to learn. It's only like 10 weeks. You're gonna like learn so much within those 10 weeks. The work I was doing honestly could have been done in like 2 weeks. However, the reason why it took so long in the entire program is because I was learning all this new material and applying it to the research I was doing.
Great. So Reese, are you good? After this, I'm going to send this out to everybody who signed in here as well as on Zoom. Are you okay if I share your LinkedIn link with people?
Go ahead. Shoot me an email. Sophia I know has my email. If you have any questions, because I'm unfortunately unable to come to the Q&A, just shoot me an email. I'll try and get back within like 1 to 2 business days. So I'll be on the lookout for my email and my LinkedIn.
Great.
So,
okay. Thank you so much, Reese.
We'll
let
thank
you
you
go.
so much for having me.
Okay. Thanks for coming back. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. So we're going to jump into the slides at this point. Came late. We had a couple guest speakers that had to leave early, so I didn't go over the slides yet. So that is where we are at this point. And so where can you find these REUs? As Reese mentioned, you could just do a straight up Google search if you know the university you want to do it at. So As I mentioned, REUs are at definitely all the big research universities, but they also have them at like nonprofits and organizations and research labs that you wouldn't know are associated with a university. So there actually is a website for REUs. I'm going to send these slides out as well as the recording. And if you could also type it in yourself. So search REU sites if you just want to look it up yourself. And you can do a whole filtering thing or just look through every single REU there is. There are a lot. And they're literally all over the country. There might even be some that are international. Haley, do you know? I saw. Okay. Haley's going to talk a little bit later about her experience. There is also a website called REU Finder. So if you want to just look that up on a Google search, you can. You will find the slides here. There's a woman named Tiffany Reardon. She actually works at UC Berkeley now and used to work with a MESA program. Yeah.
What is the REU?
Yeah. REU is research experience for undergraduates. Yeah. So this REU Finder, this woman compiled, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. I think it's pretty much duplicate to the official NSF REU site finder, but that's another resource where you can find them. And then there are some other places. So hopefully everybody by now knows about the SLI newsletter. If you don't already, make sure you join that. I think this week, Carlos, how many internships did we send out? Like 7, 6. So we're always sending out internship opportunities to the SLI newsletter. Those are not all necessarily REUs though. So there's a difference between just general summer internship that a company might run or they might have through a different lab. REUs are kind of a special category that have funding from a specific source. AAMC, so for those of you who are pre-med, there's an actual website for summer internships that are a little bit more medical related. So you can go in and find those on their website. This is another website, kind of general research opportunities. Again, not specifically REUs, but there are things there. So you will get these slides, don't worry, or you can take a picture of this chat slide if you'd like. But there are tons out there, or just do a straight up Google search like Reese did. So how do you apply? As with any application, there are these main components: the description, the overview, the eligibility, the required materials, and the online or paper form. I think nobody really does paper anymore. So with the description and overview, make sure you read that carefully. What is this opportunity? Where is it? When is it? How much will you get paid? That's where you'll get the idea. Do you want to even skip this, or do you want to look at it in more detail? Eligibility. So another one you want to really look carefully at. And what I will say is that a lot of the times they're not going to explicitly say community college students allowed to apply. So either you can assume you're good to apply because you're basically like a first or second year student, right? If you think about it in the undergrad context, or you can contact if they have a contact information of a person to reach out to, just to be sure. I think probably in most cases, they like community college students will be eligible, but if there's anything you're not 100% sure about, if you're not sure because of your residence status, if you're not sure because you have a previous bachelor's degree, whatever your situation, you want to make sure and ask if you are not sure. Required materials. So sometimes there are going to be additional things, and it sounds like from what Reese said, Haley, did you also have to get rec letters for yours? Yeah. So rec letters seems to be a common thing. I'm not sure about cover letters or transcripts, but this is where you want to really read carefully what the expectation is. So I do want to take a little bit of a pause and add a little bit more to what Jeff said about getting rec letters. So when was the deadline of your REU application? Do you remember?
The deadline was in February.
Okay.
I applied by then, so my rec was, letter right for March.
Oh, great. So I think that is generally the timeline of REU deadlines being the application deadlines. So like Jeff said, you can start now. And I really encourage you to not go to your instructor and be like, can you write me a rec letter? But like start by building a relationship, start by like being more active in class, get the attention now so you don't have to wait till 2 weeks before. And that's the first time you've ever had contact with them. So make sure you're reaching out to a faculty member as a primary, I would say. And then if you have any other staff, you know, I'd say that's a second choice, but really you want to focus on the faculty that you have had while you're here. And then once you are ready, you've built that relationship. This is where you're going to want to send a formal email. So I will say many times I get an email from a student, hey, Sophia, could you write me this rec letter? It's due next week, and no other information. So be ahead of the curve and write an informative email that shares how you know the person, a formal request, what the deadlines are, what the names of the opportunities you're looking for, and then 2 or 3 bullets about you that you want them to highlight. This can go a long way. So you're not writing the letter for them, but you're giving them a little bit of a preview for them to write a better letter for you. And I always recommend attach a recent resume, or if you have a LinkedIn profile, so they can look at what else you've done, because that shows, number one, you've done some homework, you've done a little bit of prep, you acknowledge this is a hard process. So you're trying to give them all the raw materials so it'll make it easier for them to write a letter for you. And Jeff said 2 weeks, I think even more. A week is like if you know them really, really well, and you know they can turn around a letter for you in a week, because a week is not a lot of time. So if you look at some applications now and you see the deadline is not till February, get working on it now before the end of the quarter, just to start building that. I have an example of an email template in here that will be in the slides, where it goes through all the different information, but you see it's a pretty robust email. It's not just a one-liner that's asking them for the letter. And within that, I even put a note like, I'd love to do a quick one-on-one with you. Could you tell me when your office hours are if you're not in their class currently? Maybe you had them in a previous quarter. Or if you're in their office hours, just go to their office hours and make the formal ask there. But whatever you can do to build that relationship, like Jeff said, is going to take you a longer way for a really tailored rec letter versus a really generic one. And it sounds like from what Reese said, her rec letter was one of the big things that got her in. So just a couple of final tips. I've said most of this. Use your office hours now. Oh, the other thing to know is once you get a good rec letter from somebody, you can always go back to them again. So don't feel like once you've used it, you've burned that chance. Once somebody's written a letter for you, you can ask them for all those scholarships you're applying for the 10 other internships you're applying for. A year from now, go back to them. Hey, I'm applying for transfer. I want to ask if you could do a rec letter. They're going to more likely say yes if they've already got a letter. And that happens to me all the time. I have a whole bank of rec letters. People come to me a year later, 2 years later. They've transferred and now they're applying for a scholarship. I've literally had students like that. But since I have a letter, it's so much easier for me and I'm more willing to do it than the first time around. So once you've got that rec letter, you are going to be set for at least the next couple of years. Because then you want to keep making sure your rec letters are fresh. And then finally, always make sure you write a thank you letter. Once they've written that rec letter and they've taken the time, it goes a long way for their goodwill to be like, oh my gosh, this person wrote me a thank you letter. I'm so going to write them a letter again the instant they ask, even if it's a day before. I have had students do that. So make sure you write a thank you letter and then give them an update after you've gotten the acceptance or the decline, just to let them know, because I know I'm often left hanging, like, did that student get that opportunity or not? And again, in building the relationship with that person, you want to keep them in the loop. So that's my spiel about that. And then the online application, obviously you want to fill that out accurately. I have heard from internship program people that a lot of times students don't get an internship because they didn't even fill in the application correctly. So that at least is in your control, right? Like the rec letter, that's not in your control. Obviously the statement of purposes, but make sure you fill out the application as accurately as possible so you don't have the chance of being declined. Read all the fine print carefully, don't skip anything. So a couple tips, and then I'm going to hand it over to Haley and Daniel here to share. So get organized. So you're going to start looking through all these internships. You're going to see some of the SLI newsletter. You're going to see some of the REUs. And instead of keeping them in your head or bookmarked as a million tabs on your computer, I recommend creating something like this. So we've got a template of a spreadsheet in here where you make a list of all your internships, the deadline, all the things that you need, when you sent it, any sorts of follow-ups that you need, but keep a tracker for yourself so you can keep track of all of that. I encourage you to do that for scholarships too. Just like have an internship tracker, have a scholarship tracker, stay organized, because you're going to lose track of all of this stuff. Yeah, we'll be sharing these slides afterwards. Oops. And start going through this now. So I know you all are probably in midterms and then finals are going to be coming up. Some of you are applying for transfer. these deadlines are not gonna go away, right? So what I always recommend is maybe just set aside right now, 2 hours on Fridays or 2 hours on your weekend every week to start looking at this stuff. Work on, okay, what are the things I need to do? Statement of purpose, the rec letters. What's my timeline for getting those? So I'm not waiting for the last minute. And we'll definitely hear from Haley and Daniel about their process for doing that. So these are things you can work on right now, even though the deadline's like February or March, these are all things you can do. You can get your recommendation letters. Transcripts might require, so you might want to wait on that. You might be asked for a resume, you can work on updating that, and then working on your essays. I'll show this as one last thing and then we will pass it over. So last year I created this Canvas shell and it is open to the public, so you can access it through the slide that I'll share. You can be added to this, but there are these different guides on creating a resume, applying for internships, scholarships, personal essays, cover letters, all of these. When you click through, it's got additional information. So a lot of the websites that I just showed you with the listings of the internships are listed here. So this is kind of like a nice go-to resource if you don't know where to start. So I recommend you join that. Yeah. Okay, so let's kind of stop for a bit. And Daniel, do you want to go first and share your experience on REUs? First, introduce yourself, your affiliation with Foothill, and then your experience with the REU process.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Daniel Ramos Mejia. I'm a Foothill graduate from 2022 and I transferred to San Jose State where I spent the last 3 years getting my undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering, and now I'm currently doing my master's at Stanford University in bioengineering. Yeah, and then so I myself haven't done NSF REU, but I have applied for an NSF REU, and I've also done other research experiences for undergraduates at Stanford. So I've had, you know, I think the difference is an NSF REU is funded by NSF, and then these other summer undergraduate research programs are funded either through donors or through different ways of raising funding. Maybe the School of Engineering of the school you're applying to is funding this particular research experience. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about like your process for finding those? Because I think that's one of the big things. And then similar to what Reese did, like what was your process in the application too?
Yeah, so so my first summer research experience was really through the SLI internship program, and through that I ended up networking with a lot of PhD students who were here at Stanford that mentioned to me that you know, Stanford isn't really the only institute that offers research. If you look at any other university around the country, if they have graduate students, chances are they are going to have research experiences for students to apply for. So, you know, I started looking at schools that I was interested in, like Stanford, UCSF, Berkeley, the three big schools around here. I know San Jose State also offers REUs as well. If you I would go about, the way I went about it was I was interested in tissue engineering, 3D bioprinting. So I first looked up what institutes were really in the leading, were really leading that field at the time. And then when I had a list of 5 or 6 schools that I felt were the schools that were really ahead in that field, I then looked for specific research experiences that were offered at that university that could then tie me to a lab that I was interested in eventually doing research in.
How did you do that? Did you like go to that university's website and then like how do you dig through all of that to find where their internship or their research experiences are listed?
Yeah, so sometimes what I would do, like I would type in Stanford summer research internship programs, and then it would pop up a list. Some schools like Stanford, they have a specific tab in one of their websites where they have a listing of all the research programs that they offer here, similar to what the NSF website is like. So that's kind of how I started to go about it. I would look for something that was specifically in engineering, because that's what my background was in. So I would use like keywords like engineering summer internships. I would really just do like a generic search, and then from there start to look at whatever links popped up, and then I would open it, and then from there you could kind of go and start digging into the websites and see where if there are any other potential programs that are offered over the summer. And then also networking with a lot of students too, people who are in a PhD program, they had to do the training to get into there, so they also gave me tips and also programs that they ended up doing and recommended that I ended up applying for.
And then can you talk a little bit about the application process for a lot of those things? Was it similar to what we said?
Yeah.
Letters and the statement of purpose, and that was it, or were there other things involved?
Yeah, so I think for the application process, you're gonna have like some generic things, which is the statement of purpose. They didn't mention it, but a lot of the times they'll also ask for a personal statement. So statement of purpose is really, this has been my journey. This is what led me to my interest in this specific field, and now this is what I want to do. And then you write about, like, as we just mentioned, like your interest in the lab, why you want to join that lab. And then the personal history statement is more about your background, talking a bit about yourself, your upbringing, the challenges you've overcome, things like that. So you really have the personal statement, the statement of purpose. You have an unofficial transcript. You're more than likely going to have to submit a resume, and then the letters of rec, I think, are like the staples for the application process. And then there could be like other things that a program might want to learn more about, like maybe supplemental questions that aren't going to require like a big essay, like a 2-page essay, but you might just answer the prompt for that. Sometimes, some of these programs are based for students who are in financial need, so you have to provide like a financial a FAFSA document to show that you are receiving financial aid or something like that. But really, yeah, the gist of it is you have those generic components, and then depending on what the program's asking for, you might have to do a little bit more, like but yeah, really that's what the overall goal is, I think.
And then could you talk a little bit about, like, when you were the rec letter process, who did you ask rec letters for? Was it people here? Was it mostly at San Jose State at that point?
Yeah, so so from my understanding is your first choice for a letter of rec should be a faculty member in a field that you're looking to apply for. So someone like, if you're in community college, someone STEM related would be good. I think if you have to revert to like an English professor of an English class you took, I think that would be fine. But really they're looking for someone who has a STEM background. So that's really what I went for. I ended up, so one of the letters of rec I still use till this day, which is one of the first ones I got, was Jeff Anderson at Foothill, because he really can show a side to the reviewers of me that other professors aren't really looking or have seen from my end. I have professors of letters of rec that have been mentors for me in research and working in their lab, and then I also have letters of rec like Jeff, who know me more personally and can talk to me about, I can talk about my character, some of the challenges that I've overcome that these other professors don't know about. So it's kind of like a strategic game. Like, now, as you progress, you might have to submit multiple letters of rec. I think right now, at this level, you might only need 1 or 2, but once you move on, they might require 3 to 5. So once it gets to that point, I mean, that's where, like I said, I get more strategic, where I'll have one from Jeff where he can mention and talk highly about my character and my personality. And then I have a couple other letters that really highlight my grit in the lab, the research that I've been pushing and advancing in their lab, and things like that. And then also too, if there's a professor at San Jose State, which I took his class 4 times. Like, there were different classes, but he taught 4 different classes that I ended up being in. So then that's another indicate, that's another professor that could potentially talk about my work ethic in the classroom, which if you're doing REUs, they're not going to really see that side of you because you're really just focused on research.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Daniel. Let's hear from Haley's experience for a little bit, and then we'll see if there's any questions. So let's spotlight this one. And so Haley, do you want to introduce yourself and just share what you did, where it was, all that kind of stuff, similar to what others have shared?
So the way that I got my research position was through actually SLI, through the newsletter. I got an email last year around maybe January of like research like REUs, and like the headliner was like, you want to travel and do research, like do REUs. And I was like, oh my God, like best of both worlds. So I looked through the NSF website, the vaccine website that Sophia listed in, on the slides I went through, and I just kind of searched the key words like economics, policy, like social justice, like fields that I want to go into, and I found a couple. I kind of narrowed it down to just one single one, which you shouldn't do. You should find multiple ones, but luckily I was able to land the single one that I applied to. So I had a similar process. I had the personal statement. If I already had a draft for it, from previous internships that I applied for, so I kind of just reuse it and just like touch it up, to like kind of tailor it to that, RU. And then I also had my resume and then the letter of rec, which I asked, I did an internship with SLI, the summer program, with Stanford and their psychology department. And so I asked my mentor at the time for a letter of rec, and she was happy to write it for me, even though I hadn't like talked to her in so many months, but I was able to reconnect with her. I did give her like only a month in advance of notice, which you should do. I would say 2 months is like a good, like.
Even a month is pretty
range.
decent.
Yeah. But luckily she was able to write it in time, and then I didn't hear back until April, and I got my offer letter, as Sophia mentioned, because a lot of our youth use like a semester system, and Foothill is a course system. I had to kind of leave my classes a little bit earlier to do the RU. My professors were very nice enough to like let me go a little years earlier, just communicate that. If anything, as well, communicate to whoever's running the RU, if you could come 2 weeks later, because I also had people in my RU that like came like weeks later, so it sounds like feel discouraged. We were like still spending some time.
Yeah.
I was doing research for, it wasn't even like my field related, it was, the RU was transportation related, so we researched like all fields of the transportation. So my field of research was looking at food security and accessibility in Massachusetts, and mapping how we could make like supermarkets more accessible for people who don't use like public transportation, who use like public transportation or like walking. So it was like out of my field of knowledge, but I kind of wanted to commit to it just because to like broaden my range of like knowledge and research. Maybe I do have interest in it and I go into that field. I think after my research experience, I don't think transportation is my field, but you know, you learn, and that's the good of it. I like met so many people. I've had.
But tell them where it was. Did you mention that?
What was that?
Did you say where it was?
Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah. Did
Yeah.
she say that?
University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Yeah.
Across the country,
Across the
3,000
country,
miles.
yeah. So I moved there. I lived on campus. I had a dorm. They provided so much of like, I even got like food swipes like for like the dining hall. Like they were very generous with like resources. Yeah, we got to do field trips like all over Massachusetts. I even got to go to Cambridge, which is right next to Boston. And just to like learn like who goes into that like sample research. Yeah, don't feel like discouraged if you don't find an RU that's like specifically what you want to go to. You can also do ones that, you know, maybe you have a slight interest in and you want to broaden like what you're going to go into. So those are my style. Yeah, I had a mentor. I had a faculty mentor that was from the University of Massachusetts. And I also had a PhD student who was guiding me throughout my entire research. I think we mentioned how you're going to read a lot of scientific papers, and that is so true. Like, my first 2 weeks there, I was just reading scientific papers to learn like the new terms and like the whole world of human security. And yeah, it was difficult at first. Like you just staring at a computer for so many hours. So it also encouraged you to like learn how to like make time for yourself, because I feel like with research, you kind of get lost in it. Or you also just don't have like not very linear. Like you're just gonna be like kind of researching everything and seeing how it connects. So also make time to like outside of the research labs, like if you're in the lab, learn to like take breaks and like also like time away from like the research, just because when you're constantly doing it for hours and hours, you can get lost in it. So that's the thing that yeah, that is my experience. I don't know anything you want me to mention.
No, I mean, I think it's when I didn't even know Haley applied, and like she said, we did this presentation last year, we sent it out in the SLI newsletter. And I know another student who also applied to the REUs and got one in Chicago. And one thing we were talking about a little bit earlier is that don't not apply to an REU if it looks like it starts before school finishes, because a lot of times those are negotiable, either with the institution or, like Haley said, with your professors. So if you see a couple and you're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want to do, but they start June 1st and we're not done till June 28th. Don't count yourself out. Apply, see if you get in, and then if you get in, at least you know that they're interested in you, then negotiate. First, think about, yeah, who are your professors that quarter? Is that negotiable? Then you call them up, and the worst they say is, no, you can't do it. Then you just say, oh, wow, I at least got an acceptance, but I didn't get in. But the best thing is that they might be like, oh yeah, you can do the first 2 weeks online, and then we'll see you when you get here in July. Or you arrange your exam schedule a little bit differently. So don't base your application on the dates of the internship, just base it on your interest in it. And like Haley said, it sounds like some people in her cohort came late, and there's always workarounds, because not everybody's on the semester system.
No, so I think coming from like a community college, it felt like the imposter syndrome, like, oh, I'm not gonna know to be here. And the people who are going to like Ivy League schools, like, don't feel scared that you're coming from community college.
Totally.
My REU was like so nice enough to like include community college under the description, and I know a lot of REUs don't do that, so, just because you might be coming not from a same institute, like, don't feel this pitch at all.
Totally, yeah, I think that's good.
And I think that pertains to any internship experience.
Definitely, yeah. So do people have questions? Because we have about 10 minutes. We can end early, but if people have any questions, either for Haley or Daniel, who's still on the line, or for me, feel free to ask either in the chat or here in person. Yeah, Drew.
If we find our own internship that you don't have or anything, then we bring it to your attention and you might have to facilitate something.
Yeah, totally. If you either hear of any and you need some support, or if you want us to help get an info session together, yeah, we can totally help with that. Definitely, as many as we find and that we post in the SLI newsletter, there are so many out there. Like, these are the ones that just come into my email box. These aren't even the ones that we're out there researching. So there are so many internship and research opportunities out there that y'all would be eligible for. You have to make the time, and then you just have to apply, because you never know what'll happen. Maybe you'll get an acceptance, and at least you get the chance to do that. Any questions? Yeah, Daniel, go ahead. You want to make a comment?
Yeah, because I ran into this issue yesterday because I was helping one of our master students look at an internship at that was an NSF REU. The NSF REU is available for undocumented students if you qualify for DACA, if you have work authorization or if you have a visa. But if I guess my piece of advice is if you aren't, if you don't have any of that, then I think that would be good to look into like the programs I mentioned that aren't funded by NSF, because if they're internal summer research experiences, like SURF, the one that I did, they accepted undocumented students, and I think MIT also offers a summer program that that does the same as well. So just like a piece of advice, because I ran into that yesterday. I thought it would be good to share.
No, that's a good point. And I think, what you could also do is if you say you see an REU, it doesn't hurt to just contact that lab and see if they have other funding opportunities. Maybe the NSF is just one of their funding opportunities, but they have other funds that are a little bit more flexible. So yeah, definitely. I think it never hurts to ask. I always say, what's the worst that'll happen? It's not like they're gonna fire you from something you're not even in. So the worst to say is no, and at least you know now, right? So it's always good to ask, just to make sure. Any other questions about this whole process? Anyone online? Cool. So we are gonna be posting this recording. We'll post it on our website. We'll be sending out the slides to anybody who signed in today, as well as anybody who signed up for the event on Zoom. But definitely want to just encourage you to get started now. Look up those websites. Start bookmarking. Thanks, Drew. Start bookmarking which ones you want to do. Create that tracker so you can be organized. And we'll also share the information of those who joined us today as guests to be a resource. Yeah, Daniel, go ahead.
One more thing I wanted to mention that I think like unexperienced students who haven't applied tend to have like a notion of all the summer REU applications open up mid-fall and close like end of January, early February. And I think a lot of the time people who haven't had experiences think that the application might be open in like April, May or something. So I think right now is like the perfect time to start looking, because we are getting in the crunch time of all these applications being due, because they really want to make all the selections before the summer comes.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, I want to say this right now is internship application season for the summer.
Yeah.
As weird as that seems, once you hit, if you're like, oh, I'll just wait till winter or spring, it's going to be too late. So that's why we're doing all these workshops now. We did a Slack info session a couple weeks ago. We're sending out tons of information on the SLI newsletter. So this right now is the height of internship application time. So you got to make the time. All you applying for transfer, all of you like deep in 4 STEM classes, you have to make the time because the deadlines are not going to slow down. No extensions on these deadlines. Yeah, Daniel.
And then I guess the other piece of advice would be try to figure out what mentors or faculty members you're going to ask for a letter of rec and ask right now, because if you ask over winter break, I feel like that's like a really bad time to ask, because you might not get a response for a while, and then you have to wait another 3 weeks until the quarter starts in January, and the beginning of the quarter is really hectic for professors. So I think asking right now before the quarter ends and getting it on their radar, so that way over the winter break they're working on it, versus trying to reach them over winter break. They might be on vacation or they're not looking at their email like that, and then now you're stressing about not having a key component of the application.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And if you are a first year student right now and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot, just maybe start getting this stuff together in your mind. You know, start thinking about those rec letters, start maybe a personal statement and apply next year. So at least now you know what the process is and you don't have to rush it if you are going to be here another year or two. Any last questions? Okay, I think that's it for today then. Thanks so much, Daniel, for joining us on Zoom. Thanks, Haley, for joining us in person. And good luck to all of you, for those of you who apply. Stay in touch. Take care, everybody.